Welcome everybody to another edition of the Orangebloods Texas Football YouTube channel. I'm Jeff Ketchum, joined as always by Anwar Richardson. Do us a solid, hit the like, subscribe to the channel. Boy, do we have stuff to talk about today. Anwar, as we record this on Monday morning, Texas and the Big 12 have already sent their statement to the Big 12 and then put out a statement to the media letting everybody know they are not renewing their Big 12 rights. They don't really have any interest. Thus starts the first step forward for both Texas and Oklahoma to join the SEC. It really does feel like there's no turning back.
Nah, you talk about something that comes quick, fast, and in a hurry. I mean, this essentially is a saying like, hey, we're filing for divorce and we're ready to, kind of move on. And so, Ketch, you outlined some things. I'll just give you some of my general thoughts, but, I read your 10 thoughts from the weekend. If you haven't subscribed to Orangebloods, Ketch will probably tell you about some great promo that we have right now, because you want to get these news there. Ketch is just, it's a fascinating thing, Ketch, because the Texas fans have always kind of felt like they didn't really love being in the Big 12, and they've always talked about different conferences. And now it's definitely seeming to happen. Now they're joining the mega conference to borrow your words, to create this Death Star. It is going to be really interesting, Catch, once this gets done, time frames, ESPN's help. And then, how soon is Texas out? So there's a lot to digest. There's a lot that is going on with this, but shit's happening, Catch, isn't it?
No, it is. And it's fascinating to me that you went away to a wedding in Florida, and in the time it took for you to get to Florida and come back, Texas broke up with the Big 12, and like this SEC thing is happening. I think what's most really curious to me is a week ago, I don't think Texas fans would have been able to truly process what their feelings are about all of this, because they've spent so much time with the SEC being the enemy and with the SEC being a real problem in recruiting. And, for a long time, Texas administration has viewed the SEC as beneath Texas, that the academics aren't as good, that the overall ideology isn't parallel, that, that Texas just cares about some things. They're classier, if you will. Texas has thought of themselves as the classy one in all of this. And I think it's caused Texas fans to program their brain a certain kind of way, because you have to tell yourself whatever you have to tell yourself to sleep at night.
Yes.
The moment that this comes out, I have been amazed at the glee, the joy, all of the words that describe happiness in the dictionary. That's what Texas fans are feeling. I would have never guessed that it would feel this good, that such a thing could have such a profound impact on the way that people feel. But I think the members of Orangebloods.com, I think Texas fans in general, this was like a lightning bolt. I don't know if you watched Ted Lasso, but in the newest episode of Ted Lasso, in the very first episode of season 2, one of the things that one of the characters tells another character is that they don't deserve to be fine with someone that they're dating. They deserve to feel like they've been struck by lightning. That is how Texas fans feel today. They feel like they've been struck by lightning, and it's changed the way they view the world in a completely positive way. This is the single best thing that's happened to University of Texas athletics in the 25 plus years I've been covering the program.
And you're right about the giddiness, Catch. So, one of the things I have been a proponent of for years, where I would always get shouted down by Texas fans, would say Texas needs to play Texas A&M, right? And I would write that annually, and the amount of Texas fans who would tell me they never want to play that game again, they never want to see that game again, it's done. And I was like, oh, okay. People told me I never want to step foot in College Station again, and all the insults, right? So when this whole thing is coming about, like last week, Catch, one of these little firestorms I set off, I was like, would love to see this game played in AT&T Stadium. And the amount of people who shouted me down, Catch, it was an overwhelming. And eventually I said, I had to go back and say, okay, clearly this is my worst take ever, right? And everyone kind of forgave me and we kind of laughed and moved on. But the amount of Texas fans who are saying, yeah, can't wait to go play A&M at College Station shows the giddiness, shows that the things that they said before, now things have actually changed. Like the opinions have actually changed. And so there's almost like an excitement, Catch, that you've seen from Longhorn fans that they just haven't had with the program in a long time. And then when you think about what's the last thing to really been excited about, maybe it's been the Sugar Bowl victory. And outside of that, there hasn't been this, because this is, it's not even just big for the program, Catch, and I don't like to go into hyperbole, but this ends up being one of the biggest moves in college football, Catch. I don't think it's an overstatement to say adding these two programs ends up making SEC into something mega, and it makes this into one of the biggest moves we've ever seen in college football. So I think everyone understands that. I think everyone is in agreement. I think everyone can see it. And I even think A&M can see it. And even though they may not want to and may not be excited about Texas kind of becoming the cool kid that now comes to the party, and they were the kind of the cool Texas representative. Well, but I think at the end of the day, everyone's going to see there's more money involved, and there's more attention, and it is going to be a win for everyone.
Yeah, I think with all due respect to Texas A&M, who I think previously has held this title, I think the biggest single move that will have ever taken on an Overreaction Monday show, my big overreaction would be that this is the single biggest realignment move in the history of college athletics. That may be the only thing that would trump it would be if Notre Dame moved to the Big Ten or Notre Dame moved to the ACC full time and not just for a season. But there are very few shockwaves that I think can match really. And look, Texas and Oklahoma are weirdly tied at the hip now, historically, beyond the ways that we've ever thought. They released a statement together today.
Yeah.
Together.
Yeah.
They're talking as we. And this is a league that has always been kind of every man out for himself. This was not the case back in 2010, 2011, 2012. You did not have Texas and Oklahoma projecting messages together, speaking together as a partnership that they are. I think this is how Big 12 fans should have known it was serious. It wasn't Texas and Oklahoma not on the same page, looking out for different agendas. This is what it looks like when Texas and Oklahoma are together, when they have the same agenda, and when one voice can speak for all. It really does make for a powerful punch. I mean, Texas and Oklahoma doing this together, the magnitude of which we've never seen, I think, in the history of college athletics, it's a big deal. And I think the conversation quickly will turn to what next. And I think this is where, if you're a Texas fan, an Oklahoma fan, a Big 12 fan, an SEC fan, now we wait and watch. Texas and Oklahoma are going to project that if they have to, they'll see this thing out till 2025. They don't want to, they don't expect to, but legally, this is what they need to say. This is what their lawyers are telling them your official position needs to be. And now they're going to sit back and they're going to watch the rest of the Big 12 lose its mind. And I think in terms of when the Longhorns and Sooners are playing in the SEC, I think 2023 is a target date that you could likely circle, but all of it's going to depend on what happens next. How quickly do the other schools in the Big 12 start to look out for themselves? What does Kansas do? What does Oklahoma State do? What does Texas Tech do? And if they start to scramble, they find their new homes, this thing has a chance to dissolve and break apart rather quickly. But in a perfect world, Texas and Oklahoma aren't having to forfeit tens of millions of dollars in penalties to make this happen. So they're just going to sit the hell back. They're going to chill. And they're going to wait and see how this thing proceeds, they may get voted into the Big 12, or excuse me, into the SEC in the next week or two. It might be before the start of training camp when you see them admitted into the SEC. But from a start date standpoint, it all is connected to the events that will take place now, and they're uncontrollable. Like we have articulated and correctly pointed out every step of the process in the last 5 days leading up to today. Like we said on Wednesday, what we're hearing is Texas and Oklahoma next week will announce their intentions not to renew. They want to go to the SEC. That's where we are now. As you mentioned, there's a lot of stuff that still has to happen, and it'll all now unfold in front of us. And it will probably be unlike anything that we've seen before, because I don't know that we've ever seen a conference like the Big 12 absolutely collapse and fall apart at the seams the way it's happening right this very moment. It's really hard to predict. You just get your popcorn ready and get ready to watch it.
Well, there's like there's two things, right? Catches what happens to the Big 12, and of course, like what happens in the immediate. What happens to the Big 12 once Texas and OU leaves will be definitely interesting, because anybody that they put in is not going to have the name recognition or probably the history of success. What if they go back to the what's up with USF? What's up with UCF? I mean, you can add in teams in order to add it. You can add in Tulsa. I mean, you can try there. Maybe there's a domino where some of the other conferences get poached and you get teams that move up, but there's not going to be, the star power in this conference is just gone. I mean, what conference could Baylor realistically go to? And how many people would say we really want Baylor? There's no disrespect. I'm just talking about from a names recognition standpoint. For Kansas has got the basketball brand. So what happens in the Big 12 is definitely going to be interesting. Oklahoma States of the world. But that's why, Catch, I just wholeheartedly believe if you are the SEC, and really if you're ESPN that has the money to pay the penalties, but for both schools that you could probably make back with some ad revenue, I think 2022 has got to be your target. I think the last thing that you need, and I think last thing Texas and Oklahoma needs, is to be the hated schools going on road trips for the next 2 years. I don't think that's good for the safety of coaches. I don't think that's good for the safety of parents. I don't think that's good for the safety of fans who want to travel, because there's going to be some anger. There's some animosity as far as what's going to be lost. So to me, Catch, they've got to make it happen sooner than later. I know they can, and hopefully it's just a negotiating thing, and hopefully there's a process that they're going to go through. But even if 2023 is like a little ways away, Catch, I just wouldn't want to be, have my kids, or my players going to all these places where I know they are going to be hated because of the, what may happen to the conference, and of course the financial blowback that, that could eventually happen as well.
I mean, Texas stays hated. I mean, you've been to Lubbock. I mean, that place, you've been to Lubbock after it's been somewhat neutered. I mean, they're not allowed to throw shit at people like they used to, but in general, everywhere Texas goes, they're hated. They're
never going to be hated the way they are now, which is,
but if you're hated at 10 and it's a 1 to 10 scale, it can only go up to it. Like if we were to create a supermodel scale and it's 1 to 10, I mean, 10's as high as it can get, no matter how fine that supermodel gets. She might be the finest woman in the world. Either we decide that she's the only 10, or, the 10 just has different layers of 10s existing. There's your Brazil, right? Like Brazil has its own layer of 10, but no matter what, at some point it reaches its cap. I don't know. I have not sensed from Texas officials that they're worried about their players or their coaches. Now, maybe that's just because they don't do a whole lot of, they traditionally don't spend a lot of time thinking about coaches and players first, no matter how much they say it. This is just going to come down to these schools being able to find their safety spots, and their safety spots being able to work in a way where they also can join in 2023. But if the Big 12 is in a position where the majority of the teams in it can't begin conference play somewhere else on the same time frame, then this is where Texas and Oklahoma, I think, get pushed into a corner that they don't want to be. I mean, Texas will do a lot of things, but the idea that they would just forfeit tens of millions of dollars, whether they have it or not, isn't the issue. This is a school that may be changing its ideology in a lot of significant ways, but setting money on fire just for the sake of setting money on. This was a school that less than a few months ago contemplated not getting rid of Shaka Smart because of buyout money that's a fraction of the cost of what it would take to leave the Big 12 early and the tens of millions in penalties that would come. So I hear you. I do. And hey, I've seen ugliness in the Big 12 before, for sure. But Texas ain't about giving up tens of millions of dollars to anybody just to be able to move a little bit early. They will not do that, in my opinion. They will wait. And if they're pushed into that corner, maybe their line of thinking changes. They are betting that this thing takes care of itself for them, that the natural byproduct of them, because technically they haven't even left the Big 12. Technically, all they've said is, we're not renewing our rights, we're keeping our options open. Now they want to see what happens around them, and they're praying, they're begging, they're banking on that this thing is so unsustainable that they'll be able to avoid, I think, the financial penalties that would arrive if they just simply said, we're taking our ball, we're leaving it, and we'll just pay whatever it costs because we want to do this now. I don't think they're at that frame of mind. Maybe they could get there, but for now, this really is about creating the chaos, letting the chaos occur, and then sorting out all of the dead bodies when it's over with.
Yeah. And by the way, I never said Texas would pay. I said maybe ESPN could help out as far as, I
don't think that's going to happen. Like
I'm just saying, well, they did sign a $3 billion deal with the SEC. I'm not saying it won't happen. I'm just saying what my thought process is as far as getting them out sooner than later, in ways that it could happen. It doesn't necessarily, involve that. Either way, regardless, it's going to happen, right? Yeah. And it's just a matter of when at this point. So it's 2033. If they let it play out, I know if you let it play out, Big 12 media days are going to be really interesting over the next couple of years. What are we going to talk about?
Oh, we know.
That's all it's going to be. That's all you're going to field questions about, and it's all going to be about replacing Texas, and it's all going to be asking, Patterson about what it's going to be like when Texas is gone, and Gundy when Texas is gone, and it won't necessarily the focus won't be on the programs that are there. And of course, Texas fans will now have a huge interest in SEC media days and everything that happens from an SEC perspective. And I'm sure, Ketch, where we talk about, a game this season, versus Arkansas, that could be a preview of what you're going to see from an SEC perspective from, a year in and year out opponent, right? So there becomes a little bit more, the interest, it'll be interesting to see the balance of Big 12 interest from fans versus SEC interest. And it may just be both, right? It may just be, everyone they want to know what's going on in the Big 12, but there's definitely going to be interest in all the teams that Texas can have, some things from. And here's the other great part about the potential move. One thing that will officially be retired from my vocabulary is how many 5 stars does it take to beat TCU? Because now, Catch, I have to go, how many 5 stars does it take to beat Bama? And I'm like, oh, snap. It's going to be a lot.
Texas fans are so happy that if you're saying how many 5 stars does it take to beat Mississippi State, they can, adjust it on war. That's perfectly fine. It's kind of like music to their ears. God, we're going to get so much content on our YouTube channel off of this move. We literally never will be shy for things to talk about for this foreseeable future. Onward, real quick, and I just to put a ribbon and bow on that. I
Sure.
think you and I both agree. The contracts say till 2025. While it is really hard to handicap the percentages of would it be 2022, would it be 2023, 2024, would they really wait till 2025? I don't know how to break those percentages down. I think both you and I would co-sign on the idea that there's at least an 85% chance they don't go till 2025. The details have to be sorted out, and how they get there remains, I think, unresolved. That just feels super unsustainable to think that 4 more football seasons could occur before this move is made. Ignore what the lawyers and what the early rhetoric sounds like on official statements. That's not sustainable.
It's catch. I don't see how it is. There's two things that have to happen. And first of all, if you're the Big 12, you have to find other suitors to keep your league alive. So if you're the Big 12, you've got to start talking to other schools, see what their contracts look like, buyouts look like, and get those things in the works in order to try to fight. Now, also, if you're the Big 12, you're probably going to try to, you're going to beg and plead, and it's probably not going to work at all, because, I think this comes a move that helps out, both. But I'm with you, Catch, and I can't see this kind of uncomfortableness. Because it's going to be uncomfortable for a lot of people involved. I can't see everyone being this uncomfortable for another 4 years. Like, I see at some point there's going to, there'll be some sort of maybe like buyout of some sort of reduction in something, but not just the entire time. Just because everyone at this point, again, it's like announcing that you're getting divorced. So at some point, you're just going to want to move on, and that's what's going to happen. Everyone's going to want to move on and start fresh.
It's one thing to getting, I had a 18-month engagement that felt really long. An 18-month divorce sounds excruciating.
What does a 4-year one look like?
A 72-month divorce sounds like the type of thing that causes people to hurl themselves off of buildings. Real quickly, let's change directions here on the Overreaction Monday show here on the Orangebloods Texas Football YouTube channel. NIL. Yesterday, Orangebloods.com announced our first 2 NIL signings, Texas wide receiver Jordan Whittington and Texas slugger Ivan Melendez, both 12-month contracts with Orangebloods.com. They will be providing content right here on the Orangebloods Texas Football and expanding YouTube channel. So make sure you do subscribe, hit that button, because starting on August 1st, we're going to have exclusive YouTube content involving Texas athletes across the full spectrum. But Whittington and Melendez, our first 2 officially announced signings, I can't say the name, but we actually agreed 2 terms and submitted paperwork to Texas compliance today with our first Texas women's athlete. So hopefully that will be something that we'll be able to announce in the coming days. It's a brand new, there's Onward, a lot of stuff going on at Orangebloods, a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
The least of which, though, isn't we're getting ready to do this monstrous enterprise on YouTube. We're going to have practice by practice updates from Jordan Whittington. That's the plan with other Texas football players once they become official as well. This, in our mind, you and I have been working on this behind the scenes for a while. This is what we had in mind, changing the way that media even operates in the world of college athletics.
Yeah, Catch, it's been, you and I have been talking about this, probably since they started talking about NIL. So this has been a conversation that's probably been a year, lots of conversations behind the scenes about it. And, it's a huge benefit. And I think there's so many positives that come from it. I think, the challenge that we have as reporters is that, it's hard to always give it a story about someone because, you're just limited by when those people are available. Now that you have the opportunity to have someone to give you constant, access and constant availability to be able to share their stories, and you get to know them on a totally different level than it is. Like a lot of times people don't know this, Catch. A lot of times when we do interviews, let's say on a Tuesday during the regular season with players, we don't know who's there until they literally show up. They just show up, and then you're like, oh, well, what do I ask such and such? And then they're gone within 8 to 10 minutes. So this gives us that opportunity, Catch, to be able to share their stories to the world in a really fun and creative and unique way. It also gives them the opportunity to also profit off of name, image, and likeness. And let's just be honest and keep it real. We as the media members have criticized the NCAA for years for saying, yo, you make all these money off of players, but yet media members have done the exact same thing, who've made their careers off of college players through, access exclusives and so on and so forth. So this is honestly something I think is great for them. It's fair for them. It helps them grow their brand. Obviously, the byproduct will help us with our YouTube channel. So it's a win-win for everybody. I don't know about you, and I said no for you. I don't want to speak for you, but it's very exciting because no one's ever attempted to do this. But if we're able to pull it off the way that I think we're going to pull it off, I think it may be something we see more often.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this has a chance 20 years from now to be the thing that Orangebloods.com is most remembered for, and what at that time would be like a 40-year existence if we're talking about 20 years from now. But and talking to the athletes, there's yes, the money that they potentially stand to make from the NIL deals, these in particular, sponsorships, revenue sharing, all of that kind of stuff. They're super excited about that. But I'm mindful of what Ivan Melendez said yesterday. I said, hey, I need to get a quote for like a press release that we're going to put out. And the thing that he said that he was most interested in was that people were going to be able to see him as something other than a baseball player, that they get to see him humanized in a way that I don't think the current structure of the media player relationships in college athletics previous to this have really allowed for. Beginning on August 1st, Ivan Melendez and Jordan Whittington have a chance to frame and shape the way their stories are told to the public. And it's a level of control that has never existed in the history of college athletics. And every single athlete, men, women, everyone, their families, everyone is excited about the concept of controlling their own stories, being able to answer questions and allow a peek into their world. That I think sometimes, guys, Jordan Whittington shows up at Texas and he's framed by his recruiting ranking. He's a 5-star, he's a 4-star, and we refer to them almost as pieces of data and their talents, but they're not always people. The human part of this, especially in sports where they wear helmets and you don't even see their faces. We're going to see a lot of Jordan Whittington's face. He's going to be able to tell us his story through his own experiences, and that we can be creative and do it in ways that nobody's ever done before. That's our goal. I think is incredible. Exciting is the word that you used. Absolutely. And our commitment will be to take care of the athletes. They're partners with us. The intent will never be to create gotcha clickbait content. We're going to be talking to each of these individuals dozens and dozens of times over the course of the next 12 months. It's about partnership. It's about relationship building. And again, it's about letting the viewers, the fans, inside of their lives in a way that's never occurred before. This is us on the front foot of creating history. And I think every one of these players is incredibly thrilled at the idea that they get to kind of control the next year of how they're presented.
Yeah.
It's a really exciting time.
The last thing I'll say on that, Catch, is you bring up a guy like Jordan Whittington, which is a tremendous example, right? What do we know about Jordan Whittington other than injuries? Like that right now is his story, right? That's all we know, is that he's been injured, and he's had to fight some injuries. And that's all that we've ever been able to glean from him. And now we have the opportunities to go beyond something like that, you know, to be able to know who he is as a person. We don't know he's got brothers, sisters, you know, we don't know anything like that. And all we know is fantastic in high school, injuries in college, nothing else. And now imagine being able to know a little bit more, you know, to be able to go behind the scenes and learn more about these guys and in different realms, and, you know, and letting them dictate it, you know, per se, because even sometimes with, you know, the networks, they dictate that what the story is, and they get to tell their own. So I think it's great. I'm looking forward to the other players that we're going to sign and that are getting in the fold. And you know, it's always different when you're one of the first to do it, Catch. But I'm excited in that this is, I think, going to be something that we look back on, and of all the things that we've been able to say we've achieved in our career, I think being able to do something like this will probably ranked as one of the highest, if not the highest, when it's all said and done.
Look, it was really my final comment on this. We've got lots of time to have more and more comments on this, but as we wrap up the Monday Overreaction podcast, video cast here on the Orangebloods Texas Football YouTube channel, it was really kind of cool to see the Austin American-Statesman break a story involving Orangebloods being the first to do kind of what we're doing. Like Texags did an event. These are 12-month contracts, relationships that will lead to dozens of interviews and video projects over the course for each individual athlete over the course of the next 12 months. It's one thing to be first. It's one thing to have the Austin American-Statesman write a story in our hometown reporting on, we're competition for the Statesman. And that they wrote that tells you how big of a story this is on a national scale. But it's one thing to be first, and it's another thing to be best. And I think our chief mission isn't to create a headline in July. It's to create content over the course of the next 12 months, beginning on August 1st, that changes the way people even contemplate the kind of content that they can receive from an organization like orangebloods.com. It's groundbreaking. And, you know, we've got announcements later today, including the arrival of Ari Temkin to our YouTube Death Star, if you will. Ari, long time, I would say, friend of the website. Once upon a time, more than a decade ago, his first full-time radio gig was working with Sean Adams from orangebloods.com on their daily radio show. We worked arm in arm as radio partners together on The Horn. And then Ari's gone off and made a name for himself with a daily show on Sirius XM radio covering college athletics in the Big 12. He does Dallas Cowboys post-game stuff as a part of their official networks. And, you know, to be able to bring him into Orangebloods to help us on the YouTube side of things and to serve as a college football insider and to help us elevate our coverage and production of these young athletes telling their stories. Again, there's a lot of exciting things going on at Orangebloods, and we'll be talking about them for days, weeks, and months to come. But these are just the first steps being taken. The ones that follow it are going to be more exciting than the first ones. So buckle up, get your popcorn ready. There's a lot going on right now. And orangebloods.com and Orangebloods YouTube are going to have you covered from back to front and everything in the middle. Do us a favor, hit that freaking like button on this video, but more than anything else, you're going to want to be here. You're going to want to see Jordan Whittington's first video on August 1st. You're going to want to see Ivan Melendez's first video on August 1st. Hit that freaking subscribe button, because I vow to you, there is more to come. Just not today, because for now, Anwar and I are going to say later. See you tomorrow.